Hello everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar in Legal Concepts for Decision Makers. My name is Monique Singleton. I am the Associate Director of Enrollment Management here at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies. I am joined with Suzanne Centolis and Jeffrey Karzeski. They are our subject matter experts and instructors for the Legal Concepts for Decision Makers certificate program. We are overjoyed to have them today. I will be getting started in about a minute. So I want to give everyone just another minute to come in. But if you can hear me in the questions panel on the right side, do me a favor and just say, yes, I can hear you clearly. Fantastic. I'm getting yeses. Yes, everyone can hear me. That's awesome. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. We're 2 minutes after. I don't want to hold you all up on this fantastic lunch break. So once again, my name is Monique Singleton. I am joined with Jeffrey Karzeski and Suzanne Centolis. We are overjoyed to have you all here today to talk about our certificate in legal concepts for decision makers. If you do have any questions along the way, feel free to use the same questions panel on the right side. Ask any questions that you have. I will be happy to answer them. And then if there are any subject matter expert questions, we will let Jeff and Suzanne answer those at the end. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass it over to Suzanne and Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, you want to take it?
I don't know that it matters. I think we're actually, I think we both can do this, but I guess I can go ahead and get started and I can pass to you as we go through. But for everybody who's online, the idea behind this particular component was to actually provide some basic knowledge about 3 separate components of business that a lot of people that run into, especially from the legal perspective, and that is corporate law, the structure of companies, partnerships, and business entities, contracts, which of course anyone who's involved in business would need to work with. And then the third component is intellectual property, litigation, and personnel issues. I can't think of what the title is, and that's actually my part of the course, which is terrible to say. But at any rate, basically HR issues, hiring, firing, how you, employment law. That's the words I was looking for. And Suzanne is responsible for the contracts portion. And then there's a third professor, Deborah Bouchot, who actually is responsible for the corporate law portion. But the idea is to familiarize students with the legal concepts in these areas so that ultimately you wouldn't have an in-depth knowledge of these particular areas after the course is over, but at least you would have enough familiarity that if a question came up, you would know possibly where to look and possibly know that an issue exists. So, and I'll let Suzanne actually say a couple of things too, because I can drone on for a while.
Well, as Jeff said, this is it's an interesting program because it gives you a taste of just about everything that you'll have in the business world. It's not designed to give you 4 years of a degree or a 3-year JD in law, but what it does is it gives you enough confidence, I believe, to be able to take on nearly any issue that arises. And you know, in business, these issues arise. You know, 9 o'clock you're having a good day, 9:10 you could be having the worst day in your life. So you have to be able to, on the fly, make decisions sometimes, and your decision-making process should be based on your education and your experience. If you don't have a lot of experience, 10, 15, 20 years of experience in business, sometimes the confidence can go a long way because your education will provide that to you. And what we try to do here at Georgetown is to provide you with that foundation. One of the things that we do here so well is to provide you with that foundation because Jeff and myself and the other instructor in this program, we've been with Georgetown teaching and instructing students in the law for, well, I think Jeff has the
No,
award.
no, don't say.
Since Jeff was a small boy in shorts and little knee socks. And of course, I wasn't born then. But I think the one thing that the Georgetown in this program can give you is a wealth of experience, a wealth of teaching knowledge, because we've been doing this with each other in a program, and in Georgetown's continuing education program. We also have the opportunity to, if there are questions that arise and we don't have an answer for you, we all have our own network of people, attorneys and paralegals and experts in different fields. So even if we don't have immediately the answer for you in a class, we can get that for you within a short period of time, which is a great thing, because we can call each other, we can call people that we know in the law business and a lot of industry, legal industry, and that wealth of knowledge goes a long way too.
So maybe before I was going to say, are there any questions that people have before we go into the next set of slides by any chance?
No, right now we don't have any additional questions.
Okay, perfect.
We're hitting a home run here, Jeff.
Hey, that's the way it goes, right? I mean, so I think Suzanne was about to say, I think between Suzanne and Deborah and I, Deborah, of course, because she's not on the phone, so I'll throw her under the bus. She is in fact the one she's been with Georgetown longer than all of us, but I think each of us has at least 20 years experience with Georgetown, just to fill that out a little bit. Yeah. But the objectives for the program, you can see them on the screen. Again, I won't delve into Suzanne's areas, but what I'll do for employment, intellectual property, and litigation, I can discuss at least a little bit about that. But again, it's basic legal concepts, understanding what the areas of the law mean, the difficulties that you may run into, and just a general understanding of how these areas of the law function. So, for example, at least in the patent context, I'll throw that out as one example. If you've never ever gotten a patent before, we'll actually go through what the process is from a very broad overview perspective, so that you understand how you obtain a patent. The same is true for trademarks, the same is true for copyrights. When we talk about litigation, we'll basically run through, this is how litigation is run, starting from the earliest stages of discovery and filing a complaint all the way through to appeal. For employment law, we'll just talk about some of the basic issues of what are some of the responsibilities that employers have, and more specifically, how can they avoid creating problems for themselves in terms of how they hire and promote employees within their organization. So I'll turn it over to Suzanne.
Another part of this program is for those of you who are just entering into the entrepreneurship arena, and sometimes you don't really understand how corporations are created, because there is an actual structure, there is a methodology to it, and it's governed by law. Depending upon which jurisdiction you're in, whether in Maryland or Minnesota or DC, the law of that particular state governs how your contracts or how your corporations or how your partnerships will be created. And so what Deborah does is she goes through all of that for you to make you comfortable with the entire process, how to find it, and what you do when you get it, how the government, your state government, interacts with new businesses, and what your responsibilities are to the Secretary of State, as well as creating a board if you need one, or if it's a partnership, how partnerships are created, and also how they are terminated. And there are certain rules and regulations that go along with this, and Deborah goes through all those with you as well. She also explains to you what the responsibilities are of corporate directors, of corporate officers, owners, and employees, more on the side of the directors and the people who run the business. Because the people who run the business not only have a responsibility to the business itself, they have what's called a fiduciary duty, and that duty arises out of the law. So again, the law governs what happens as far as what the responsibilities are for individuals who are part of the organization. You just can't say, well, I got a corporation, whoo, that's great. There are legal responsibilities that arise when the government is issuing an incorporation. to a company. As far as contracts are concerned, contracts are, I could teach 2 years of contracts and and probably not reach it all. But the business of contracting is what business is all about. And there are certain stages to contracts. There are certain kinds of contracts. There are certain ways that contracts arise. There are certain ways that contracts fail. There are different kinds of failure in contracts, and we go through all of that. We also, in my class, the contracts and agreements class, we also touch on negotiations. This is the part of contracting that everybody hates. Everybody hates it, and I don't care who you are. Nobody is born to be a negotiator. It is a skill that is learned. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not really good at it. Well, you're not good at it because you haven't tried it or you haven't practiced it. We're all good at things once we practice them. But just think about this, and I tell this to my students. You've been negotiating since you were born. You cry, somebody feeds you. You cry, somebody changes you. You have been negotiating since you were born. So you're not a newbie at this. You made an agreement with your parents on how you're going to get an allowance, how you're going to get the keys to the car, what your responsibilities were. That's all in the business of negotiating a contract. Yeah, sure, you didn't sign an actual document that said, I will bring the car back by 11 o'clock and I will be in the house by 11 o'clock, but you certainly made a contract with your parents when you did that. So you've been doing this all your life. It's not as scary as some people think it is. And we go through all of these to give you, again, that confidence that you need to do it on your own.
So for, I guess I'll go ahead and take over real quick. So for everybody that's on the line, you can see basically the format of the classes. So the courses basically run, each component is 2 consecutive weekends, or Fridays and Saturdays. So Friday is a 3-hour session, and then Saturday is a 7-hour session with breaks, of course. And of course, you can see, the total completion time and the cost. In terms of the actual structure of the individual classes, currently, of course, we're online, so we're all sitting, very comfortably in our houses or in our offices and having a discussion online. But as I said, we, at least in my classes anyway, we try to take a break, roughly the hour to hour and a half, get up, walk around for about 15 minutes so we can get some coffee and re-energize, and then continue with the exception of Saturday, because we do have the lunch break. Suzanne?
I think that in the past, we've always taught, Jeff and Deborah and I and other instructors who have taught law at Georgetown's School of Continuing Studies, we've always taught in person. But because of COVID-19, we transferred it all over and readjusted all of our classes to a more flexible online program, which meant in a lot of ways we had to actually restructure our classes completely, because we would, I don't know about Jeff because I've never taken a class with him, but at least in my classes, I would make sure that we would have small groups together. We would work in groups, because in the law, and particularly in small businesses, you work with people every single day. And you go into somebody's office and you sit down and you discuss things, and then you have people come in from the outside and you contract with them and you figure out what they want and what you want and whether or not they can meet your needs and you can meet their needs. It's all a lot of people contact rather than just a big classroom lecture. So we adjusted our program, the way we deliver the program, but we didn't adjust the quality or the substance of the classes themselves. My class is the same quality and the same substance that you would get if you were sitting in a classroom with me. The only difference is I can't read your body language. I can't, there are a lot of things I can't do, but we make up for that because we have breakout rooms. So I can take, for example, this past weekend, I had students in breakout rooms and they were negotiating amongst themselves, and then they came back into the big room and then they negotiated a contract with each other as a big class. So we can do fun things like that, and we can do experiential learning, and we can do individual kind of needs assessments that way. But as far as the classroom is concerned, if we are able to go back into the classroom, that's great. Love it. If you've never been to Massachusetts Avenue, the building, it is gorgeous. Classrooms are great, big, huge whiteboards. I mean, it's gorgeous. But if we're continuing doing it with flex, it's fine. I mean, you can wear your slippers. It's great. You don't have to get on the metro. You don't have to look for parking. There are a lot of upsides to it. You don't have to leave the office at exactly 5 o'clock so you can make the class at 6. You can still sit in your office with a cup of coffee at 5:45 and go, oh, I got to get online at 6 o'clock class starts. So there are a lot of upsides to flex learning that I don't think I ever realized. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I don't really think I ever realized how much fun it could be.
No, I completely agree. And it actually is, it's turned out to actually be a very good teaching environment. And I would agree with Suzanne. I don't know that there's, of course, I think there's a certain loss in not actually having people together, which I do miss. Because there is a certain aspect of being in the classroom together, which is actually a lot of fun, and the interaction is so wonderful. But I don't know that we lose very much from the virtual environment. I actually think that we're able to cover the same amount of material, and I think we're able to do it just as effectively. So it's a very good, solid way to learn this particular subject matter, at least in my opinion anyway.
I agree.
I agree 110%. We worked really hard to get our courses from on campus to a flex learning environment. And the reason why we did this is exactly what you both said. It's so important to have each of our students feel included and to feel like, man, I really wish that I could be on Georgetown's campus. I really wish that I was able to interact with each of the students as well as the instructors in a way that I couldn't really do it online, or online is just not really my thing. But with the flex learning environment, you still feel that. You still feel that you're able to connect with the instructor, you're able to connect with the students in your classroom, you still get those breakouts, and you still get the conversation, the enrichment that you're looking for as if you were on campus. So yeah, definitely don't fret if online is not your thing, because the flex learning environment is very, very engaging, and we're really hoping that it's to your liking.
I also have found with some of my students that flex learning can be a little bit less intimidating than being in a classroom. You're in a classroom, you're in a new environment, you're with a room full of strangers, and some people feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, at least initially. But with flex learning, they're sitting in their homes, they're in their slippers, they have their dog next to them, and a cup of coffee, and I think it's a much more relaxed environment sometimes, so that those people who might be a little bit ill at ease initially in a classroom, maybe just returning to the classroom for the first time as an adult, that edge is taken off with flex learning.
So for this slide, I don't know, I think we've actually covered a lot of the points already, but there was one thing that I just wanted to say real quick, and that is, Suzanne had already mentioned that one of the objectives of the course is to at least give students the ability to function in a business environment if they have a legal issue that comes up. The other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that it also helps if you're going to be interfacing with outside counsel. So if you're in a business where you have to deal with attorneys outside of your company, the course is also designed so that the basic knowledge that you have would at least give you the basic foundation so that you can interact with outside counsel, so that you could either provide instructions or at least be able to understand what outside counsel is trying to convey if there's a particular issue that needs to be relayed back to the company.
Definitely, I think particularly in contracts, sometimes if you've ever sent a request out to outside counsel for a contract, to draft up a contract, and it comes back and it's in another language. It's the where-to-fors and the whereases and this, that, and it does not look like regular English. This course will allow you the education to get beyond the where-to-fors and the hereafters and all of that legalese nonsense, and be able to be confident enough to say to the outside counsel, look, lawyers are not going to be reading this on an everyday basis. It's going to be regular lay people who are going to be implementing and enforcing this contract. Could you write it in English, please? And unless you have that kind of confidence in yourself and in your knowledge of contracts, and sometimes that's a little intimidating to do. So part of what I try to do is to ensure that people know that when they are in a meeting with a lawyer that they're paying for, the person who's paying for the lawyer is the leader, not the lawyer. So hopefully that's an element that you'll be able to take with you out of these courses.
So I guess, oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to go back to the previous slide, or are we just going to, do we want to stay to this slide? Actually, both of them are basically the same. Yeah, I think they're basically the same. And I think we've covered both of the content of both of these slides, I think. So this one, and let's see the next one again, please. The next slide. Yeah, so this one also is the same. So again, with all of the subject matter that we have, the basic idea is to provide the basic foundational framework so that you can, not only help your business that you're involved in to succeed, but also to be able to interface with others and be able to have a dialogue with those people, because you understand at least the basic issues that are being raised in whatever the legal issue is that you might have associated with a particular business.
I think one of the biggest pitfalls in starting a new business is understanding employment law. And employment law changes nearly every day. And if one does not know the ins and outs of hiring, I mean, it can be as simple as having to know what the classification is for an exempt employee versus a non-exempt employee. That's governed by the Department of Labor, and what an independent contractor is versus what an employee is. And you can get into a lot of trouble with the United States government and with your state governments if you miscategorize or misclassify a new employee coming in. So employment law to me is a foundational element of any business, because you need to know how to hire them and you need to know how to fire them. And it's not as simple as, oh, well, everybody is at will. Well, that's grand, but there are also ins and outs and nuances, and Jeff can walk you through all that too.
Yep, and actually we do cover all of that. So, the simplest thing would be, you may have heard of it, Title VII, right? So obviously there are certain things that you can or cannot do in terms of, factors that you can take into account in terms of how you hire people, who you fire, and how you promote people and who you promote. And we try to go over all of those basic fundamentals so that you understand, at least some of the pitfalls and where they lie and what are some of the ramifications of what that means. So if you were to violate Title VII, and for example, if you were to discriminate against an employee or group of employees, what does that mean, right? How is it that discrimination occurs? What is that concept? What are the legal ramifications of engaging in that behavior? And of course, naturally, how do I avoid that behavior? That's ultimately where we want to end up. With respect to intellectual property, we basically the idea is to help everybody to understand, what are patents, trademarks, and copyrights? What are the different types of intellectual property? How do I protect them? And what do they mean to my business? How can I use these particular types of property successfully? Because, once you complete the course, you understand what they mean, how they might be of benefit to you. And of course, if you're involved in a business, do you need to have that particular type of protection? Is it something that's desirable? Is it something that's going to help your business to succeed as it moves forward?
And part of that has to do with contracting too, because if you have an employee who's a contract employee, in other words, the person comes to your company and they're going to have a beginning date and a termination date to their employment. That's a employment contract, as opposed to at-will employment, which means the individual can be terminated at any time without notice for any non-discriminatory reason. And most of us are at-will employees. But if you have an employment contract with an individual, and that individual might be responsible for testing, genetic testing, and if that person creates a test or discovers something, that's intellectual property. Well, who does that belong to? Who does that discovery belong to? If it's not within the employment contract, you might be in a lot of trouble, because that person may walk out of your company owning that test or owning that discovery. So they all kind of intersect at one time or another. So it's kind of important to know all the myriad of aspects of employment law and contracting and intellectual property and creating companies, and et cetera. So again, this is a program where you get a really good taste of just about everything.
So here is basically an overview of the program, who it's ideal for, the duration of time that it's going to take, your tuition. I want to pay very close attention to the bottom half, which is the start and end date of each of the courses. So it's extremely important for you all to take a look at these dates and times. Make sure that you are available for each of the course dates, because as you seen earlier in the webinar, it's important that you all are in attendance, because our grading scale is pass fail. And if you are in attendance for all of the courses and you complete all of the coursework, essentially you'll receive an SC for successfully complete, and anything lack thereof, you could possibly have to retake the course, take it at a later date. So it's very important that the dates and times work best with your schedule and you can attend all of our courses. However, the classes are open enrollment, so there is no application to complete in order to attend the certificate program. We do require that you have a bachelor's degree. However, if you do not have a bachelor's degree, there is something called a statement of purpose. And within the statement of purpose, you would express why you're interested in this certificate program, the passion that you have, provide us with a letter of recommendation. And then if you are approved moving forward, you will be welcome to register for our certificate program. So we don't want anyone to get discouraged if you are interested in this program. All course materials are included. So what this means is everything is going to be provided to you electronically. There's no additional textbooks or anything that you have to purchase outside of what's going to be provided to you in class. In terms of the tuition and some funding options, we accept employer funding. So if your third party or your employer would like to fund your certificate program for you, they're welcome to do so. We also have a 10% alumni discount. So if you are a Georgetown University alumni or you have completed a certificate in the past, we would definitely welcome you to reach out to the enrollment team so that we can provide you with that 10% discount. We also have the interest-free payment plan option. So what this means is when you register for all of your courses, you will be able to break out the payments into 4 equal payments over 30 days each. Instead of paying for it all at once, if you needed to break it out, you may do so. And then we also accept third-party billing. So as I mentioned before, the certificate program is open enrollment. No application is required. The link here will take you directly to the certificate in legal concepts. You can always go to our website, which is ccpe.georgetown.edu, and click on the certificate program. There will be a register now button on the left side, and it will show you all of the course dates and times that were mentioned in the previous slide so that you can select, register, and you'll be ready for to attend your courses. So in terms of any questions, I know we have some in the questions panel. I'm going to open it up soon. If you do have any questions once we complete the program or the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us in enrollment. We will be happy to answer any questions as well as filter them to either Suzanne or Jeff. And we definitely want to make sure that all your questions are answered by the time that we are ready for our next cohort in April of next year. But let's go ahead and get started with our questions. So the first question is, would this suffice as education for becoming a paralegal, or do you recommend taking this after obtaining a paralegal certificate as a boost to your knowledge and resume?
Wow, so it's an excellent question. It's going to depend, from my own perspective, it would depend on where you're coming from in terms of your own experience and education. I could see this as being an excellent place to start to see if it's if you're interested in the legal area, if you wanted to go ahead and increase your knowledge and get a paralegal certificate. But I could also see where if you had your certificate, you might want to then supplement your knowledge using our course. And the reason I say that is certificate programs are all different, right? So if you were to go to a certificate program, typically certificate programs are ones that are going to provide some fundamental understanding of basic concepts like torts, criminal law, those types of things, civil procedure. Those programs may not necessarily offer specific subject matter in corporations, contract law, and intellectual property, employment law, and litigation as we have set up for this particular program. So obviously then in that particular instance, if you had a certificate from one of those types of programs, this would then be an excellent follow-on course. The flip side is if you're not sure if you want to go to become a paralegal, I would think this would be an excellent way to become involved and introduced to the subject matter so that you could then make the decision if you wanted to go ahead and increase your knowledge by going to a certificate program. And I'll let Suzanne talk for a minute too.
It is an interesting question because it's, I understand that these classes do not offer a full semester or a full year of education. As Jeff and I have said, these courses are designed to provide the students with a really good taste of various things. Like, as I said, like in contracts, I could give a contracts class that lasted 2 years and still not cover everything in every jurisdiction, federal and state. In a paralegal studies certificate program or paralegal program, the intensity of the work of the studies is far more than you'll find in this certificate program. But I agree with Jeff that if it's something that you're thinking about, paralegal studies programs can be very expensive, and well, not even to mention law school. But if you are interested in trying it and see whether you like it or not, this is an excellent program because it gives you a taste of things that you might not find in a paralegal studies program. And I know intellectual property, you're going to have a hard time finding that in any paralegal studies program. And you might find a hard time finding that in a law school. And I think that this program is more designed for people who are in business or who are looking to get further into business, start their own business, as opposed to paralegal programs where you're introduced also to personal injury and to warranties and to areas of law that would not necessarily be associated with businesses. So this is more focused on a business person as opposed to a more generalist kind of education. And I would highly recommend taking this certificate program if it's something that you think you might want to do, because money is hard to come by these days, and you don't want to throw a whole bunch of money into a paralegal program, yet 2 semesters, 3 semesters down the road and go, I really hate this, and I just spent thousands of dollars on this. And we're talking like thousands of dollars. So my suggestion is you take a little bit of a taste rather than eating the entire gourmet meal and see whether you like it, because it's better to have a taste and say, I don't think I want to do that, but this is a good education for me that I know I'm going to be able actually to apply in my everyday life. Whereas, in a paralegal studies program, you might not be using tort law every day or property law every day. So that would be my suggestion.
Fantastic. Okay, our next question. Is there an exam at the end to earn a certificate?
So the short answer to that is no. There's no exam for this particular program. In fact, I think, and Suzanne, you can correct me, of course, but I'm not aware of any specific assignments where there's something which is actually due in the program. Everything that we do is actually part of the the flex learning environment, and is part of our actual classroom exercises, at least for my component of the course anyway. It was my understanding that was true for the others, but I'll let Suzanne talk as well.
Well, what I try to do with the contracts and agreements class is to teach the basics of contracts and what they look like, what they feel like, how you write them. We actually draft them, and how you find the law. My students will actually read U.S. Supreme Court cases. They will brief U.S. Supreme Court cases, so they understand where you find them, how you read them, what are the components of a legal opinion, and what do you do with it once you get it, and how does that apply to you? I mean, how do you, now that you have this case in front of you, what does that mean? because there are certain things in contracts that change based upon your jurisdiction. For example, the state of California does not recognize non-compete provisions in contracts. Well, if you don't know that and you're only contracting in California and you put in a non-compete provision, unless you have a different kind of provision within the contract itself, the entire contract could be mute. So it could be void. So you want to make sure that you can find the law and then you can apply the law. So I think one of the things that I try to do is I try to create like learning modules. And then on the last day, that last long Saturday, we actually take all of those elements and we apply them in a role play in which the students have to contract. They have to make sure that they draft up a legal contract that has all the elements of a contract in it, and that they create the terms, the conditions, they write the definitions, so that they can actually have some experience not only in negotiating it, but then putting it on paper. So we actually apply everything that we've learned in a real life scenario. And then they can take those lessons and move them into their real world because they've already done it. So as far as an exam is concerned, no, we don't have exams. No, we don't grade people on assignments. But yes, my students have assignments. They do have to read the law. They do have to understand that they're going to do a little bit of reading before the next class so that they understand and they're with me because the class does move quickly.
All right. And do you all have any insight on some of the students' background, what agencies or companies they're coming from, and or what agencies they are going to once they complete the certificate program?
I usually ask my students to provide, to introduce themselves and tell us why they're in this class and what their objective is. Sometimes it helps me to readjust the class as we go along to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of all the students, not just one, not just two. If all of my students are all US government employees and they all are in procurement or whatever, logistics, then I'm going to readjust my program a little bit, my class a little bit to meet those needs of government employees. If all of my students or the majority of my students are not government employees and they are just looking, or they're looking to leave the government and looking to start their own business, then I adjust and I focus more on those things to meet those individual needs. If the student doesn't want to tell us where they work, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, the only reason why I want to know is so that I can meet their needs, and I can make sure that I'm teaching the class online with what they need.
So, and I would totally agree with that. And for the person who asked that question, what I was going to say is so over the couple of decades that I've been involved with Georgetown, what I've seen is that the students run the gamut across the map. So just in terms of the total makeup of classes, what I found is that you have students that are in private practice, students that are looking to get into law firms, and also you have a lot of people, because of where we're located, that are already in government. So there's no, I wouldn't say that the classes are weighted in any one particular area. They as you might appreciate, each semester is different, but they seem to be a fairly good cross section of at least those three areas, at least in my experience anyway.
I agree 110%. In enrollment, we get all of the initial phone calls and emails of those prospective students that are interested in this program. And it ranges from, and everybody's not from the DMV area either. We have people from all over that are interested in this program and or inquire about the program. But yeah, it could be anywhere from entry level all the way to expert, maybe wanting to do a career change or wanting to advance in their career or wanting to just brush up their skills. So yeah, like Jeff said, you never know who's going to be in your classroom, as we have open enrollment and students register for courses all the time. But it doesn't look like we have any more additional questions. But as I mentioned before, if you all think of anything, because I know as soon as we get off of these webinars, the questions begin to flow. So if you think of anything, please do not hesitate to give us a call. Our phone number is here. We'll be happy to assist you in enrollment. And then, of course, if there's anything specific for Suzanne or Jeff, we will be sure to reach out to them with any subject matter expert questions or anything you wanted to know additional. But the webinar recording, as well as the PowerPoint presentation, will be sent out to everyone who RSVP for the webinar. So no need to remember everything. We will be sure to send it directly to your email so you can share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers, and you all can be in class together. Doesn't that sound fantastic?
Yeah.
So definitely share with everyone, and we will send out the information to you via email. We thank you again so much for joining us. Jeff, Suzanne, you have been fantastic with the wealth of knowledge that you have shared in this short hour. But we thank you so much for sharing everything. And we hope to see you all in April.
Looking forward to it.